What happens when a man survives having a meter-long iron rod blasted through his skull and lives to tell the tale? And, more curiously, what happens to his personality? This isn't a fictional horror story or a twisted miracle. It's a real case from 1848, one that has fascinated psychologists, neurologists, and storytellers ever since. The name Phineas Gage is etched into the history of neuroscience, not because he lived, but because of how he changed. Let's go back to the dusty railroad tracks of Cavendish, Vermont, where this story begins. Phineas Gage was 25 years old. He was strong, capable, and well-liked. A natural leader working as a foreman on the railroad construction crew. On the afternoon of September 13th, he was preparing an explosive charge to blast through rock. The routine was simple. Drill a hole, pour in powder, add a fuse, then pack it down with sand using a tamping iron. Except this time, he forgot the sand. As he tamped the charge directly, the iron rod struck the rock, creating a spark. An explosion followed. The iron rod, over 1 meter long and 3 centimeters thick, shot upward with the force of a cannon. It entered Gage's left cheek, ripped through the base of his skull, passed behind his left eye, and exited through the top of his head. Then it landed 25 meters away, soaked in blood and brain. Amazingly, Gage didn't die. He never even lost consciousness for more than a few minutes. He reportedly stood up, spoke, and even walked to an ox cart for transport to town. Dr. John Harlow, the physician who treated him, later described his calm demeanor as almost miraculous. But while his body survived, something else had changed. At first, the focus was on survival. The wound became infected, and for weeks Gage's life hung in the balance. But he recovered, physically. By winter, he could walk and talk, and he could remember people, recognize places, and even recount the accident. To casual observers, he might have seemed mostly intact. But his friends, family, and co-workers didn't recognize the man they once knew. He became impulsive, rude, and unreliable. He cursed openly, made inappropriate remarks, and couldn't seem to stick to plans. As Dr. Harlow later put it, Gage was no longer Gage. The reliable foreman had become a drifter, traveling across the US, even joining a circus at one point to show off his injuries. He eventually worked as a stagecoach driver, which seems to suggest some recovery of function, but reportedly he was never quite the same. Before Gage, the idea that different parts of the brain controlled different aspects of personality was just that, an idea. Many still clung to the belief that the brain worked as a whole, like a muscle. But Gage's injury, localized to the frontal lobes, gave researchers a vivid, disturbing demonstration that the brain is modular, and that the frontal lobes in particular play a crucial role in decision-making, emotional regulation, and social behavior. In modern terms, Gage's injury likely damaged the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, an area we now know is deeply involved in personality, impulse control, and empathy. Gage became a case study in countless psychology and neuroscience textbooks. He forced a shift in how we think about the mind and the brain, not as the same thing, but as intimately connected. I noticed that many of you who regularly watch haven't subscribed yet, and getting more subscribers really is the best way for me to keep making these videos possible, and it won't cost you a penny. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow and allows me to create more of these videos for you. Thanks for your support. Phineas Gage died in 1860, just 12 years after the accident, likely from complications related to his brain trauma. To this day, the story of Phineas Gage reminds us that our minds are not separate from our bodies, but embedded within them, shaped by neurons, and terrifyingly fragile. Now, how do we know all this? It happened more than 150 years ago. Well, Dr. Harlow was the physician who treated Gage right after the accident and followed up with him years later. He published 2 detailed medical reports, one in 1848 and a more thorough one in 1868. These included vivid descriptions of the accident, Gage's behavior before and after, and his eventual death. Harlow was remarkably observant for his time and kept extensive notes. In 1867, Gage's family allowed his skull and the tamping iron to be donated to science. Today, both are housed at Harvard Medical School's Warren Anatomical Museum. This gave later researchers, like Antonio Damasio and colleagues in the 1990s, the chance to analyze the damage using more modern techniques. This postmortem analysis confirmed that the rod had passed through his left frontal lobe, consistent with the personality changes reported by Harlow. Multiple acquaintances and co-workers of Gage noted the change in his behavior. Though not all reports were written down at the time, some were included in Harlow's second report, and others were passed down through interviews and historical records. That said, a lot of what we know comes from a small number of primary sources, which means interpretations vary. So, while not every detail can be verified beyond doubt, the core story is unusually well supported for a case from the 19th century. But spoiler alert, something very similar happened again, and the video about this is coming out very soon, so definitely make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss it. One rod, one explosion, one man, two personalities. And one of the strangest, most important stories in the history of psychology. Thanks for watching.